Hello, Luna Owls. This is Mr. Energy, your fifth grade science teacher. Today we're going over the test review from Stemscopes. This is just something that we've done in class before. You take your test, I pick it up, pass it back out. Someone else grades it for you, and we go over the answers. It's the same thing, only we're just using PowerPoint. All right, so our objective is scholars will understand tests and quizzes, answer choice by teacher's explanation. So the first quiz we're going to start with is the pre-assessment quiz. So number 1 says, fossils give us evidence about which of the following? A, plants and animals that lived long ago. B, how weathering and erosion break down rocks. C, the other planets in our solar system. Or D, the transfer of energy from one form to another. So looking at these answer choices, which ones can you just automatically say those are not the answers from what you've learned about fossils? All right, so B should have been the first, well, not the first one, but B is one of the choices that's not it because fossils have nothing to do with weathering, erosion, break down rocks. Okay, um, fossils are not being broken down. They are just animals or plants that have been decayed in the rock. Remember that. Another one, yeah, C. I know C was probably one of y'all's first answer that's like, that's not it because fossils have nothing to do with the solar system, right? The other planets in our solar system has nothing to do with fossils. And the last one be the transfer of energy from one form to another. There's no energy if the animal or the plant isn't alive, right? So there's no energy transfer. Remember, we learned about food webs and we learned about how producers give energy to consumers and consumers give energies to secondary or primary consumers, and then that energy goes to decomposers. So has nothing to do with the transfer of energy from one form to another. So our answer choice has to be A, plants and animals that lived long ago. All right. Number 2, finding the fossils of trees in an area that is currently a desert without much life might tell us that the area millions of years ago, A, was heavily eroded by strong winds, B, received enough rain to support a forest, C, suffered very powerful earthquakes, or D, was destroyed by the impact of meteorites. So again, we're talking about an area that was once um, that was once a that once had a lot of trees, right? And now it is currently a forest. So we're trying to figure out um, what supports it now being a desert. Like what does the fossil tell us about what it was before? So again, which answer choice could you automatically say that's not the answer? Yeah, should have been D. So was destroyed by the impact of meteorites. We didn't learn anything about meteorites when we learned about fossils. Now, if you want to correlate that with dinosaurs, that's fine. But remember, dinosaurs are not the only organisms that can be formed by fossils. We learned about plants. We learned about other things when we did our activity as well. Right, suffered very powerful earthquakes. Again, earthquakes have nothing to do with the formation of fossils, also probably not the formation of how this area is currently a desert, right? If there was an earthquake, then I'm pretty sure that the area would not um, be able to, um, when earthquakes happen, the plates move. So I'm pretty sure the area wouldn't be how it is now. Was heavily eroded by strong winds. So strong winds have nothing to do with fossils. And even if it was very heavy, it wouldn't be heavy enough to support the fact that there is fossils, tree fossils in that area that is currently now a desert. So that would give us B, receive enough rain to support a forest. Right. So we know that since now it's currently a desert and we find a fossil that's a tree, we would know that um, that before that desert, there were trees. And in order for trees to live, we know that trees need sunlight and they need water. And desert doesn't really have as much rainfall as a forest would. So that's why we would say that it received enough rain to support a forest. All right, number three. This table gives information for different kinds of fossils. Sorry. Finding which kind of fossil in a location would lead to the conclusion that this area was long ago under the hundreds of meters of salt water. Let me get my pen. All right. So salt water, right? When we think of salt water, what do we think about? Okay, so we're finding which kind of fossil in a location would lead to the conclusion that the area was long, long ago under hundreds of salt water. So when we think of salt water, what do we think of? We think of the ocean, right? Right, we think of the ocean. Right? So we look at the fish skull, it says freshwater pond and lakes. That's not really going to have any salt water in it, so we know that's not right. Mouse skull, fields and prairies. Well, there's no water there, so we know that's not right. Alligator toe bone, marshes and swamps. Again, there is no salt water, and then there's the deep ocean, which we know has salt water. Okay, so we know that D would be our answer. Number four, several woolly mammoth fossils have been found. Mammoths, which lived hundreds of thousands of years ago, were covered with thick fur. Based on this evidence, mammoth fossils tell us that the area in which they are found, okay? So I'm going to get my pen out again because you know how I like to underline and highlight things. So it's saying that the woolly mammoths were covered in thick fur. So I want you to think about if an animal had to wear thick fur, what kind of environment would it have to live in? Think of you having to wear a big jacket all the time. Why would you think you would have to wear a big jacket? What is the purpose of you wearing a big jacket? And what is the climate and the environment like for you to wear a big jacket? Okay. So right off the bat, A says has too many humans. B no longer has large animals. C was at one time very cold. Or D receives more rain than it used to. So right off the bat, we know it's not A because um, the mammoth wearing thick fur has nothing to do with there being too many humans. D says receive more rain than it used to. Again, thick fur and rain. If they had to have thick fur while it rained a lot, pretty sure they would be kind of miserable in a way. You probably don't want to wear a lot of stuff when it's raining outside because you would just stay wet and not dry fast. Right. No longer was a large animals. We know that woolly mammoths are pretty big animals and they're kind of related to elephants. So it has nothing to do with them not being large animals. So C has to be our only answer choice that makes sense because for them to wear thick fur, it's probably to keep them warm because where they live was probably very cold. All right, number five, a scientist is seeking rocks that formed at the mouth of a river. The fossils of which of the following would be the best evidence that rocks were formed under these conditions? So I am just going to box in mouth of a river. Okay, mouth of a river. And when we're thinking about mouth of a river, we're going to think about um, some of the animals that would live at the mouth of a river, right? So the fossils of which of the following would be the best, and we're going to box in best, evidence that rocks were formed under these conditions, all right? So when we think of mouth of a river, which answer choice? So we have A, freshwater birds, B, large animals, C, flying insects, and D, tropical birds. Which right off the bat would you say, no, that is not the answer choice? Right. I would probably say large animals as well. Okay, large animals at the mouth of a river. I don't think the I don't think that would be the best evidence that rocks were formed under these conditions. Not flying insects. Actually, we really haven't looked at the only insect that we looked at that was fossilized were butterflies and dragonflies. Tropical bats, not really the answer, but freshwater birds would. Oh, it's supposed to be up here, but freshwater birds would be the answer for that. And we say freshwater birds because these birds are usually the ones that are at the mouth of the river. Okay, these are the birds who are looking for food, mainly like fish, um, or maybe some kind of plant that's in the river. So these birds would give us the best evidence um, that rocks were formed there. All right, so now we're going to do our post assessment. All right, number one says fossil trees were discovered in a sedimentary rock layer. In the rock layer below are fossils of clams, similar to clams that are currently found on the shores of the Gulf of Mexico. Based on this evidence, we can conclude that the area where the fossils were discovered had what sequence of climates in the past. So, you know what I'm going to do? Since we learned about um, the layers of fossils, I'm going to put older, and then I'm going to put younger, because we know that um, the lowest layer is the older fossils, and the top layer is the youngest, right? So it's asking us, we can conclude that the area where the fossils were discovered, what sequence of climate in the past, right? So right off the bat, we have beach followed by a forest. We have rocky and dry, then very moist. C says forest, and then later a mountain, and then we say D, very cold area, and then much warmer area, uh, then much warmer. So right off the bat, which one is not the answer? Yeah, it should have been D because none of these indicate that the climate was cold or warm. We just have a clam fossil and a tree fossil, right? And we also know where clams are. Where are clams usually at? We know that clams are usually like in the ocean, beach. Okay. And where do we usually find trees? We usually find trees in the forest, right? So we're looking for an answer choice that gives us beach first and then a forest first, right? Right. So what is another answer choice that's just like that's not the answer? Forest and then later a mountain, right? We there's no indication. Well, mountains do have trees, right? But we would have to have something other than a tree fossil to specify that this area was a mountain. So, like maybe a certain kind of plant or an animal that would normally live on the mountain, because this does not